Hi, this is Jonathan, and in the following tutorial we're going to take a look at creating some interactivity and some basic animation tips in Adobe Edge. So I'm going to start off by making a very simple comp. Now I think it's always important that you start off by creating a document and saving it before you do anything else. But I'm going to create a very simple animation here. It's just going to be this gray box which is going to go to each of the four corners. Now, in order to start the animation, it's important that we create keyframes from the beginning. Now what we can do is go to the next place. Oops, I should go to the next time first. So at 1 second, I'm going to move it over to the right-hand side. And it snaps quite well there. Now notice that it only created one keyframe and it did not create a second keyframe for the top since we didn't actually move that property. Now I'm going to go to 2 and move it down to the bottom. Now you'll see that it created the bottom keyframe, but it did not create the top keyframe. Well, this can be a problem because it actually is moving the animation. It's creating the animation from one keyframe to another. So what we really need to do is move this keyframe back to 1 so that it is in line with that. Now, in order to go on, what I like to do is just create a new keyframe at that position before I continue going on, because if I did it again, of course I'd get the exact same effect. Now I need to create a keyframe there, go over to 4, and take that up. Now obviously you can fix it like I fixed the first one if you made a mistake with this, but it's very important that you have all the keyframes at the different properties when they're needed. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just some basic replay of this. So let me go ahead and save this, and if I were to test this, you'll notice that it should go and stop at the end of 4 seconds. Okay, beautiful. Now, so the next thing what I'd like to do is have it actually replay. So to do this, we want to go to the end and we want to insert a trigger. Now we can also do this with the Control T thing, but let's go ahead and see what happens if I do play just by itself. I don't think that'll work, but I just thought I might try it. Actually, it does. So good. It's what I was wondering about. Now, play, what that does is that tells it to continue playing the timeline. Since we're at the end of the timeline, it'll just loop around to the beginning. Now, we can do this a little bit more specifically. Instead of saying play, we can just put in play 0. Now, play 0 indicates it to go back to the very beginning of the timeline. So it's the exact same thing that we have here. Now, if we want to have a marker to go to, we can go to the very end, and what we're going to do is actually what's called a label. Now, we can go up to the timeline, insert label, and we can call this start. Now, instead of going to a time, we can double-click on this and name that to start instead. Now I've done a single quote here, but it doesn't really matter if you do a single or double quote, I don't believe. Now while we're here, let me just take a quick look at this anyway. What we've got is JavaScript, and it's a object-oriented language, and one of the things that you see in a lot of object-oriented languages is this dot syntax. And what it has is the object, and that's sim. That's the same thing as saying me or I. It says the symbol that this particular code is on, the timeline that we're currently on. So the symbol will be this current timeline. Then dot play, and that's what's called an action or method if you want to be a little bit more talking about programming languages. Now this is an argument to that particular method, and we put a string in quotation marks. So that's why that works with that particular thing. So we can have play by itself, or we can have play 0, which would be a number, or we can use play start as a string. So we have a few different options there. Now we're going to actually stop this at all the different places as well. In order to do that, we're going to insert just a stop. And since stop doesn't have any arguments, one of the other things that we can do is just copy and paste it to all the other places. So we'll go to the next place and just paste. Now I copied it by selecting that keyframe or selecting that little action, and you'll see it turns yellow. Then you can copy it and paste it to another place. So now I've got the basic timeline that I want to have happen with this. And so we're going to now build our first button. To design a button, I'm going to create kind of a big garish button, so I wouldn't really worry too much about it. I'm going to create one that's pretty red and big here, and I'm also going to put some text on top. So this is going to say play. So pretty easy to tell, and I'm making it obviously so that the play is in the middle of this big button, because that's going to kind of be important as I move on. Now I could make it a little bit better, smaller, but it doesn't really matter. Well, maybe a little smaller. Okay, so there's my play. It's not beautiful looking, but that's okay. Now the next thing that I want to do is I'd like to attach some sort of code to this so that when I click on this button, it will make the timeline play. The problem is that I've got two different items, and so I don't know exactly what item to apply that to. Well, one of the things that I can do is select multiple items and right-click and group these elements together into a div. If you look over on the right, you'll see now we have group 4 and we have text 6 and rounded rectangle 6. Now these are not very good names, obviously, so I'll say button 1 BG, and that will be button 1 text. So very easy to do that. Now, of course, for the group, I'll just call that button 1. Now that I've got the basic structure there, now you'll notice when I click on this, it actually selects both the button 1 text and background. You can see that I have a blue outline around it. I don't really see that here, but it's really kind of nice. Anytime you try and click on it, it actually selects that. Now you can select the two items themselves independently by clicking on that item here in the timeline. But if you click on it visually, you'll always select the group itself. Now that we have a group, we can actually do a couple things with it. One of the things we're going to do is add the code to say click. So I'm going to choose that over on the left and hit on click, and now all we have to do is play. And what this will do, whoops, I seem to be far over here. Let me insert that play again. Seems as though I was in the middle of something when I clicked on it. So all we have is symbol.play, and that says it'll play the timeline when I click on this symbol. Now it would also be nice that this symbol only appears when we want it, and then it disappears, like the play button. So one of the things that we can do is actually turn on the visibility for something. So I'm going to come back, and at this point I'm going to choose for it to be off. Then I'll turn it on, and afterwards I'll turn it off. So this is a very simple way to make it visible. Now that off could go all the way to the beginning, because the only time we really need it on is that one point. In fact, I don't even think that we need that off on at first, because all we need is that one keyframe that says to have it on, and then a keyframe to have it off, and it kind of knows not to have it on before that first keyframe. So I think that's kind of interesting. But now this might not work if we wanted to do something like fade it in. So we might need to put this before if we wanted to do something like create a keyframe for it to be fading in at that point. So I'm going to do a quick fade in. And at that point we'll take it back to 0. Well, let's make sure I have the right thing. Oh, look at that. So our opacity is off. So I'm going to actually have to make this keyframe just a little bit later, because otherwise I can't do my opacity. I don't know if that makes a difference. So for some reason it doesn't want me to do opacity, so I had to move that out and it can be any time after it, or it can be aligned with